Though the war segments of the speech commanded far more interest and far more passion. Mr. Bush called for improved education, an anti-crime bill, a new civil rights bill, banking reform, an end to political action committees, and a $15 billion block grant for states to pay for everything from welfare to transportation. When addressing the subject of the national economy, Mr. Bush called for a cut in the capital gains rate. Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, in his Democratic response, attacked that idea.
We've got to bring the deficits down and the jobs home. The president's way to do that is to give huge tax cuts to those with incomes over $200,000 a year. We disagree. It's working men and women, the middle class, whose taxes should be cut.
Fact is, grade Mitchell and grade Bush.
Well, I tell you, for Bush, and you left out, of course, the part that made it a good speech, that was about the war. Bush gets an A. I'm grading on the curve, but he really, it's about his
For the whole speech.
For the whole speech. That's about as good as he gets as president. Mitchell, I would give a C. Now, look, it's hard for these Democrats. The president speaks to a hall, they're all cheering, and they speak just to a television
What's
camera.
their strategy?
But Mitchell, well, they're trying to say the president's dealing with the crisis in the Gulf, but not the one at home. And
they're
so
trying to have you focus on another crisis
but
here.
Here's the problem Mitchell made. He brought up the fact that Democrats had voted against this war, which is enormously popular, and said, we'll never know if economic sanctions wouldn't have worked. You know, economic sanctions against a guy who's torturing our POWs, trying to kill innocent Israelis and spreading oil all over the Gulf.
Not only that,
weapons,
Jack,
he should have left that one alone.
Jack,
well, I thought the parts of the speech on the war were the best I've ever seen Bush. I mean, it was really, I didn't say that. I wouldn't go that far. I said it was the best I've ever seen Bush.
You give him an A. You give him an A for those parts.
Yeah, the domestic part, which is what I think we're supposed to be talking about here, the domestic part was really blue smoke and mirrors. There was nothing there. I mean, he says we're going to have this education program. You realize it's been almost 18 months since we had the education summit with the governors. It's produced neither a plan nor legislation. All the other stuff was repetitive, or
all of it was repetitive.
Wait a minute, or it was gestures like on school vouchers and capital gains for the right
$15 billion in 1992 to the states. That's brand new.
That is not brand new. Nixon did that. Don't you remember? You were part of that.
New money.
It is not
new money. It is not new money.
Look, it's big. It's lots of programs that get transferred with very little money attached.
Oh, he's giving new control.
Okay, I would give him an A+ for the war part and the new vision of the future and all that, and a D for domestic. Now, I'm not sure that when the budget comes out that we won't see some education initiatives, because Lamar Alexander is going to be a great education secretary, I think. But on this other stuff, capital gains, this new federalism stuff, I mean, it's just old hat.
On the program.
I think capital gains, to pick up on what Mort was saying, is indeed disappearing out of sight. But what is beginning to emerge, a consensus between conservatives and liberals, and that is to reduce the Social Security payroll tax, at least the portion that applies to retirement and to disability, from 6.2 to 5.2%, and increase the base from which this is drawn from $53,400 a year to $80,000.
Is that pretty much Moynihan?
I don't know, but I say there's a consensus
John,
between liberals and conservatives on this.
Let me make a point about the Mitchell response. I agree that he might have been better advised not to have talked about what they did. Nonetheless, I thought it was a very tasteful thing. But the point is this. Every Democrat up to now has been fairly well intimidated about talking even about domestic issues because of the war. Anything you say about Bush is interpreted as being subversive, un-American. The budget changes that, because now he has to deliver. Let's see if there's anything serious about education. This $15 billion which you fell for, John.
Control of it.
What they're talking about is they'll send $30 billion worth of programs back to the states and $15 billion worth of money. And if you spread $15 billion around this country, it ain't much.
Oh, chicken feed, Jack. I agree with you. Let me ask you, $15 billion. What can you do with that, right?
The problem was Bush didn't have any new ideas, but Mitchell didn't have any new ideas either.
Were you surprised by Joe Biden's statement when he was asked by CNN, Bernie asked him at CNN, he said, you guys are going to have a hard time getting in the White House. And Biden said, if it costs us the White House for George Bush to win this war, we want him to win this war. And I want him to win this war. He's speaking for himself, and I would gladly give up the White House. Now,
what would you say? What would you say,
I think you can't say anything negative on the war, but the only other thing you do is change the focus to domestic crises.
I thought Mitchell did a really good job, except for the point that Fred made, especially because this war proves that sanctions wouldn't have worked. If Saddam Hussein will go through all this punishment, sanctions would have done nothing to get him out of there. But basically, he did a good job, Mitchell.
I'll see that he gets this copy
well,
of this
you
tape.
asked,
Right, yeah, maybe he'll give you an interview. All right, now let's get out. The exit question is as follows. Assign an overall grade to the President's State of the Union. We know his. He's giving him an A. Bonzo.
A plus.
A plus? Really? The
I
whole
agree
thing?
with Mort. No, not the...
Despite that sagging middle sector on the domestic side?
You know,
What do
everything domestic is on hold for
you
the
give
next
him an A.
45
What
days.
made the speech particularly good was all the cheering. Bush had a lot of applause lines on the war. That worked.
Which he trampled. What do you say?
Give him a gentleman's B.
B. Huh? What do you say?
I'll give him a B plus.
I'll give him an A minus. Issue 3, recession or depression? A deep and long recession, that's what America faces. If the Gulf War lasts more than 3 months, it's now just three weeks old, just under 3 weeks old, so says Federal Reserve Board Chairman Alan Greenspan. If the war is short, consumer confidence will rebound and the recession could be over by summer. But now consumer confidence is in bad shape. The respected conference board says that its index fell to 54% this month, a whopping drop in consumer confidence of over 7 points in 1 month. The index's record low, by the way, was May 1980, when it plummeted to just over 50%. Today, repeat, it's 54%. What do these numbers tell you, and what is Greenspan telling us, and what is Greenspan telling the president? I ask you, Jack.
Well, I mean, Greenspan is doing what all economists do. He's guessing, and he's making his best estimate. I shouldn't say guessing. And the fact is there are all sorts of signs that the economy is in for the recession is going to be at least another couple of quarters. There are some people who think it's going to be longer, some people shorter, and there is no way to tell until you, because the war is such an imponderable. That's what Greenspan is trying to say.
You think there was
if the war goes on for 3 or 6 months and is not over as quickly as we all assume it's going to be, the economy may be down the tubes.
Do you think there was a little act of retribution on Greenspan's part? Because in the State of the Union, the president said that the Fed should lower the interest rates. So Greenspan comes up and he said, if you're not out of the war in 3 months, pal, we're going into a deep recession. Is that too sinister?
When was the interview? The interview was before the State of the Union.
Did the retribution go that way? Was that the way the reprisal went?
There wasn't a reprisal. There was obedience. Because the interview didn't mean much, but then Greenspan lowered the discount rate a half a point.
I'll give you 10 seconds.
It seems to me, John, that the war is not going to last 3 months. That's, I think, consensus around your group right now. So, therefore, it's academic.
Well, they wouldn't
really,
all right.
Consumer confidence will return. And another thing that hasn't been mentioned is $40 billion of reconstruction in Kuwait and $60 billion in Iraq.
Inconsequential, mild, moderate, deep, or paralyzing? The recession. One-word answer, quick.
Mild.
Mild. What do you say?
Mild.
What do you say?
Oh, serious.
Serious. What do you say?
Moderate.
The answer is mild. Issue 4, liberty and justice for all. Since the Persian Gulf crisis intensified 1 month ago, the FBI has been locating and interviewing some of the 2.5 million Arab Americans now residing in the U.S. The Bureau says their inquiries are aimed at protecting Arab Americans by warning them in advance of any backlash and gaining their help in thwarting terrorism. But James Zogby, head of the Arab American Institute, says the questioning is harassment, and it is pure and simple harassment.
And I think that the fact that the FBI preceded this campaign by sending out a press release announcing that they were doing it, what they thought they were doing other than a crude PR stunt to insult the Arab community and put us at risk in America is beyond me.
That was from the world-renowned program, by the way, McLaughlin on CNBC. The American Civil Liberties Union is also outraged, comparing the FBI program to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Is the voluntary interviewing of Arab Americans justified or unjustified? I ask you, Fred.
Well, voluntary is the key word. This is voluntary questioning of these people.
By whom?
The
Now explain
Japanese
that.
had their property taken away. They were put in concentration camps. That's a blot on American history. This makes sense. It would be an outrage if the FBI were not doing this, given the threat of terrorism. Look, if you're worried about Arab terrorism, if you're worried about those 3,000 Iraqis who are in the United States whose visas have run out, who are you going to interview? You're going to go interview Italian Americans?
I'm sorry.
Of course not.
John, there are 110 international terrorist groups in the world today, and the majority are not Arab, incidentally. When the Israelis moved into South Lebanon in 1982, they discovered lists of people who've been trained by the PLO from 20 non-Arab countries, and these people subcontract acts of terrorism among each other.
The majority may not be Arab, but the most efficacious terrorist organizations are populated by people of Arab ethnicity. And look, the most powerful, the most efficacious, and the most terrorizing.
What is wrong?
There's nothing wrong with interviewing people voluntarily, as Fred said. Nothing wrong at all.
Of course. I mean, if the Arab terrorists were going to come into the United States, they might try to hide in the Arab community. And it's only natural for the FBI to go and ask Arab Americans who are Americans.
Who the new arrivals are.
Yeah, who are these people? What's going on?
What do you think, Jack?
No, I mean, anybody would agree with that. One of the things the FBI should be on the lookout for is newcomers, new Iraqis in the neighborhood, obviously. But that isn't where the rub comes. The rub comes when they go beyond that. And there's always danger of excess. We don't want to get in a situation where these very freedoms we're supposed to be fighting for get distorted by police state tactics.
But they're proclaiming excess, and it hasn't happened yet.
Well, there's anecdotal complaints. I don't know whether they're valid or not. Some people are anecdotal complaints that it has gone to.
You know, there has been a fair amount of violence against Arabs, restaurants being burned down and stuff like that. It seems to me that
that's because the food
complaining and acting as though they are not cooperating with the FBI, they are helping to elicit this kind of reaction.
I want to get a quick exit on this. Are Arab Americans being unfairly singled out by the FBI? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
No.
No. The answer is no. Predictions, I know.
Predictions, Boris Yeltsin, arch rival of Mikhail Gorbachev, will be launching a major initiative to privatize 300,000 stores, shops, service companies, etc. Shortly.
The clamor for President Bush to replace Vice President Quayle next year with General Colin Powell will rise and rise and rise, but Bush will stick with Quayle.
Jack.
The unemployment's 6.2, and I think it's going to get up close to 7 before it turns around.
What?
Following on Arno's prediction, the Democrats are going to make a major effort to organize a new party with a new platform in the Soviet Union to put pressure on Gorbachev from the left. And they're looking for U.S. money to help them build printing presses and found newspapers.
By the end of this year, South Africa will have its first democratic constitution, and in 1992, it will hold its first free one-man, one-vote election. Next week, war maneuvers and peace maneuvers. Bye-bye.
The McLaughlin Group.
GE is proud to support the McLaughlin Group. GE. From satellites to medical systems, we bring good things to life.
For a transcript, send $5 to Federal News Service, 620 National Press Building, Washington, D.C., 20045. Specify program date. To obtain a free McLaughlin Group Viewer's Guide, write Viewer's Guide, Box 786, Madison Square Station, New York, New York, 10159. Topics are selected by Mr. McLaughlin, and the opinions expressed are solely those of the participants.